What's up, Internet? My name is Tom Friedhof, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about Composer Manager. If you caught my last video, I showed you guys how the cool kids are doing class autoloading in Drupal 7. Well, really the entire PHP community nowadays. I showed you how to start using PSR4 namespaces now using X-Autoload in D7. If you didn't catch that video, go check it out now. You can click this link right here. Toward the end of that video, I showed an example of how PHP Storm will autocomplete namespaces for classes that it has in its index. I showed a really quick and dirty example by executing composer require within the module I wrote, just so that PHP Storm could index the composer dependency. That's not how you should handle composer dependencies with Drupal. Don't do it that way. The Drupal way to do this is to use a module called Composer Manager. What Composer Manager does is it basically finds all the composer.json files defined in enabled modules and merges them together. In Drupal 7, it typically writes the combined composer.json file in your files directory and then runs composer install once to download all composer dependencies and puts it into one vendor directory, typically cites all vendor. You can configure these places in your settings.php file. You don't have to use the defaults. In Drupal 8, Composer Manager behaves a little bit differently, and instead of writing all of the dependencies into one composer.json file, it uses the Composer Merge plugin to include the path to each composer.json file. I'll show you what I'm talking about when I demo it in Drupal 8. Let's go check out the project page. There's a lot of documentation surrounding this module. Alright, so here's the Composer Manager project page. And as you can see down here, they've got a couple blog posts that you can read about Composer Manager. Here's the documentation for Drupal 6 and 7, and then like I said, Drupal 8 Composer Manager is just a little bit different, so they've got separate documentation for that. If you're looking for Composer packages, they put those on a site called Packagist, and we'll look at Packagist a little bit later when I'm demoing how to actually use Composer Manager inside your Drupal site. So there's a lot of documentation to read there. But one main difference to mention about Composer Manager between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8 is that in D7, you execute Composer Manager tasks using a drush command. In Drupal 8, Composer Manager actually registers a command with Composer, so you're executing a real Composer command. I'll take you through Composer Manager in both D7 and D8 so you can see the small nuances. Alright, let's jump into the demo. Okay, so let's go pull up that Drupal site that we created in the last video. I'm going to use drushqd again, except for this time I'm going to say use existing. And I'm in the root, the Drupal root right now, so I'm just going to say the root is here in this directory. Alright, so here's our Drupal site, and so let's go back to the modules page just to see our custom module there. And so there's that my cool module that we wrote in the last video. And this time I'm going to download Composer Manager. So I'm going to open up a new tab here, and then let's download Composer Manager. Cool, so there's Composer Manager. Let's refresh this page. Alright, so there's Composer Manager. And now this time I'm going to enable Composer Manager. I'm going to do that first so that when I enable our custom module, Composer Manager is already loaded, and it should see the composer.json file in our module and actually download those dependencies. So you can see a composer.json file was written into our files directory, and it actually says you have to run the install command. So I thought it did it automatically, but I'll go ahead and run it since that's what it's telling me to do. And so we'll just go here, Composer Manager install. And so what that's doing is it's going to read our Composer JSON file that it wrote into the files directory and download the dependencies. Alright, so it downloaded the YAML dependency, and so let's go back to our code that we wrote in the last video. And so it looks like I was just demoing how this could work if we did an API request. Let's do something where we're changing the, let's say, the case of a string. And so let's just make this say hello world real quick. world. I'm going to delete this function since it's not needed. We actually don't need this parser anymore either. And just so we can actually see this work, I'm going to turn on the views UI so we can create a view with this area handler in it. Okay, so let's go over to the views UI. We're going to create a new view. We're going to call it custom page. And let's continue and edit. And let's add the area handler that we created last video. And so we want to show this even if there's no result. Save. All right, and so there's our area handler that we created in the last video, Hello World. And so just to demonstrate how Composer Manager actually works, I'm going to go grab a package off of Packagist. And let's look for a package that actually will turn that into snake case. Not like that one. This one looks good here. Okay, so we've got this package by this person here, and he's put it in this namespace. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to our Composer JSON file that we created. So go back into the modules, custom. So here's our module composer.json file, and there's that YAML dependency that we specified last time. I'm going to add one more dependency, and this is going to be the name that is on Packagist. And what version is this? It's version 1.0.0. So let's get that version exactly. All right, so now for Composer Manager to actually recreate the composer.json file, we actually have to run a drush command, and that looks like this. Okay, and so now the new composer.json file was written. Let me just show you. So if we come into our files directory, there is that new dependency that we specified in our module file. And so this is the combined composer file that I was talking about earlier. All right, so now let's actually run the install. Let's run update because the lock file is not up to date with that new dependency. All right, cool. So now we have the dependency actually in that vendor directory. And so let's just go take a look. And sure enough, there's that dependency that was just downloaded. All right, so let's go back to our module. And now in here, we're going to just change the case to this hello world. And so what's nice about this is we can create a new object called converter. And then we just say new, and I know that the class is called a string because I can see that over here. And so PHP Storm nicely auto-completes this for me. Yes, that's the string class that I'm looking for. So I'm gonna just double click that, and you can see that it automatically put that use statement in there for me. And so now that I have this converter, what I can do is use it. And so I'm gonna say change this to camel case, and let's put the string in there. And so now let's go take a look at what it looks like on the Drupal side. And there you go. We've used a composer dependency and included it in a composer JSON file, and we got all the autocomplete and the namespacing worked out. So it was basically auto-loading with the Composer Manager autoloader. All right, so let's go do this in Drupal 8. So we're going to use drush qd again to boot up our Drupal 8 site. We're going to put it in a directory called D8, and we want to download the Composer Manager module as well. And let's give it an account password of admin. Okay, cool. So our Drupal 8 site should be listening at this address. So let's just go back over here and let's take off this custom path that was in Drupal 7. And there is our Drupal 8 site. And so let's go ahead and log into this site. And we made the password admin. All right, cool. There's our Drupal 8 site. And so we're going to create a real quick module in here that uses Composer Manager as well. There's the Composer Manager module that we downloaded and it enabled for us by default. Well, let's go back over to PHP Storm and let's create a new project here. There's the D8 directory. All right, so there's our Drupal core that we just downloaded. We're going to create a module in the modules directory, and so there's our Composer Manager. So let's create a directory called my module. We're going to create a file in there called my module.info.yaml, and let's give it a name. So my cool module. Let's give it a type. It's a module. Description. It does cool stuff. And then we're going to say that this is a Drupal 8 module. Save that, and now we're going to come back in here and actually create a Composer JSON file. And so the Composer JSON file takes a JavaScript object, and Composer JSON or Composer Manager in Drupal 8 requires that you actually give your module a name and a type, otherwise it's not going to work. So we're going to say that this is the Activelamp my module. This is a Drupal module type. And then this is where you actually specify your requirements. And it takes an object. Oops, I didn't put quotes around that. And now we're going to use the same namespace here for the file. And we're going to take the 1.0.0 version of that. Okay, cool. So now we have our Composer dependency in here. And so now if we go back to Drupal, okay, so now I'm in the root of the Drupal 8 project. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually run a Composer command called Drupal update. And Drupal update is not defined. And so there's one step that we missed here. We actually have to run a PHP script that's in the Composer Manager file. It's the init.php file in there. And so from here, I'm just going to type in PHP, modules, Composer Manager, and I think it's init.php. Let's see, maybe in scripts. There we go, init.php. And so now that initializes Composer Manager, and it does, and it writes some stuff to the composer.json file in the root of the project. So now if we run Composer Drupal update, it should actually update. And so this command typically takes a while the first time you do it because it's downloading all the updated Composer dependencies from the internet. And here we have an error. And so this is actually an error in Drupal core. And so I actually have an issue up on Drupal.org that takes care of this issue. But basically Drupal core is depending on a dev version of this Gaston.js library. And so if I go over here to Drupal.org and then go view my profile. Oops, my posts. So there's an issue here with Composer Manager that I basically posted a workaround for so that you can actually use this and not get this error. And it's basically to delete the Gaston.js library out of the vendor directory in your document root and then run Composer Drupal update again, and it'll just download the latest version there. So that's exactly what I'm going to do, is delete that. And so I'm going to run Composer update again, and it should work this time. Okay, cool. So it's downloaded the new Gaston.js, and previously it should have downloaded our library. Let's go check in the Drupal 8 vendor directory. Nay, just. Okay, so there's that string case converter again. So the Composer aspect of things worked here. So let's code out this module so that you guys can actually see this working. We're going to create a routing file here. And then we're going to call our simple route just some route. You can name that whatever you want. And then let's put the path to respond to at my module path. And then we're going to specify a controller here. And then, so this is how you define your namespaces in Drupal, but it's basically in the Drupal directory, and then just the directory structure that you want to follow in your source directory. And so we're basically saying for that path, call the default controller and call specifically the content method. And so to be able to see this path, we're just going to specify some requirements. And if you have the access content permission, then you can see this path. All right, so let's go create this default controller in our module. And so you need to create a directory called source, a directory called controller, and then in here we're going to create our default controller class. And remember, this is in the Drupal namespace. All right, cool. So there's our default controller. And so to make this work, you need to extend a base class inside of Drupal, and that base class is called controller base. And so there's our autocomplete. Yes, we want that version of controller base. And again, you can see that it automatically added the use statement for which version of controller base or what class we're actually referencing there. All right, and so we told the routing system to look for a function called content. We'll just make this a public function. And then in here, basically, you can return a render array, and that Drupal will render that as however your render array is supposed to be rendered. So we're going to say this is a markup. And then we're just going to say hello world. So let's go ahead and save that, and let's go back to our Drupal site. I'm going to hit the refresh button and go down. There's my cool module. Let's enable that. All right, so my cool module is now enabled, and the path that I told it to look for is my module path, and so let's go to that path real quick. All right, cool. So there's our hello world string. And so we're going to do the same exact thing that I showed you guys in Drupal 7. Let's go back to our controller. We already downloaded the Composer dependency, so I'm just going to create a new object. And it found that dependency in the vendor directory. And so there's our new object there. And I'm going to convert that hello world to, let's do snake case. All right, and so let's refresh that. And there you go. It formatted that with snake case, all lowercase with an underscore. And so that's basically how you use Composer Manager in both Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. So that's how you should deal with Composer dependencies in Drupal. What's nice about using Composer Manager is that it registers an autoloader with Drupal so that you can use the same style PSR4 autoloading that we've been talking about. And don't worry, it doesn't conflict with X-Autoload. Drupal tries to load classes through several auto-loading mechanisms. First, it's built-in class loader, then through the Composer autoloader, then X-Autoload. That's all I have for you guys today. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have a suggestion for a future topic, hit us up in the comments. Until next time, stay active.